At SAP, we welcome diversity in all aspects and strongly stand against discrimination of any form.
At IBM, we believe that an inclusive, healthy workforce is essential not only to our success, but to the success of our clients and the communities in which we work and live.
Our goal as corporate leaders should be to support our HIV-positive employees with understanding, empathy, and without prejudice.
Imagine how you feel in your working life if you have always fears on your shoulder, if you have always to hide something.
At SAP, I pledge to fight stigma and promote open, respectful cooperation for people living with HIV and other chronic illnesses.
I pledge to welcome employees living with HIV who can be open about their HIV status without fear of reprisal.
I pledge to create opportunities for employees to engage with AIDS services and community-based organizations.
I pledge to honor privacy and never ask an employee to disclose their HIV status.
I pledge to promote my commitment internally with our employees and publicly share my organization's commitment on social media.
It is my responsibility to ensure our employees living with HIV feel supported and respected.
It is my responsibility to ensure IBM's employees living with HIV feel safe, supported, and respected. I am committed to embracing diversity and inclusion. And on this World AIDS Day, I am committed to working positively.
Hello, everyone. I am Alfonso David, President of the Human Rights Campaign. On behalf of our team, especially those leading our HIV and health equity program, I would like to express my deep gratitude and excitement to be working in tandem with corporate leaders like you, to bring education and attention to the needs of workers living with HIV and AIDS through the Working Positively campaign. The HIV and health equity team at the Human Rights Campaign has led many public education efforts before, including endorsing the use of PrEP as an effective prevention tool, advocating for repeal of laws that criminalize people living with HIV, and addressing the unique challenges facing gay and bisexual men and transgender women, especially those of color. Unfortunately, discrimination against people living with and affected by HIV and AIDS persists, including in the workplace. This bias is driven by fear, stigma, and basic misinformation, and continues to exclude people living with HIV from private and public sector employment opportunities. To achieve change and end the stigma associated with this virus, we need the support of business leaders like you, whose commitment and motivation is critical to effect change. Inclusive employers know that creating welcoming workspaces is not only the right thing to do, but is also good business practice. Employers that create welcoming environments for employees living with HIV or AIDS stand to benefit in workforce recruitment and retention, as well as improve employee engagement and productivity. This is why we are thrilled to be working in partnership with IBM, SAP, and Deutsche Aidshilfe in the Working Positively campaign to materialize the support and commitment of major employers like you to positively change the daily lives of countless employees living with HIV around the globe. As witnessed in Germany and other European countries, we trust that the campaign will be just as successful in the United States. The leadership of our founding member companies today will inspire many more companies to join us. I would like to thank you for your leadership, support, and solid commitment to helping HIV-positive employees. Together, we will make a difference and advance the ability of all employees, including those living with HIV and AIDS, to thrive at work. Thank you.
My name is Holger Wicht. I'm the Director of Communications and spokesman of Deutsche Aidshilfe, the big German HIV service organization. We do HIV prevention and stand up for the rights of people living with HIV. And we are, so to speak, the mother of Working Positively. I'm very happy and proud to be part of the launch of Working Positively in the United States today. And I'm so happy to do it with great people. That's such a great thing and a huge step for this important initiative. 1.5 years ago, we started Working Positively in Germany with partners like IBM, SAP, and many more companies and employers. Big ones operating globally like Daimler, local ones like an airport in the German city of Dortmund, maybe somebody knows it, but also complete cities like Munich and many, many more. Our aim was and still is to make clear people living with HIV are simply colleagues like everyone else. They deserve respect. Discrimination, prejudices, and moral judgments are not okay. Nor are HIV tests in working life, because what for? HIV does not have to play a role in working life. It's really that simple. There's absolutely no reason to be afraid of people living with HIV. HIV is not transmittable at work. With an efficient medical treatment, it's not transmittable at all. Many people, by the way, don't know that yet, so spread the news. Nowadays, people living with HIV can live long and normal and healthy lives, and they can work like everyone else. But they still face discrimination, and discrimination damages the satisfied life you can have with HIV today. And that's something that can make you really sick and reduce your energy and performance. Thus, the message actually is, relax and treat people living with HIV just like your other colleagues, hopefully with respect. Okay, it might be simple, but it's not easy. How do we get such a big job done? It has to do with fears and prejudices, with things that are deep in the minds of people. So we have a lot of work to do. And we knew we needed employers by our side supporting our mission, since they can change things in their companies and they are role models for sure. Fortunately, we had already had a very close cooperation with IBM for more than 10 years. And we had an IBM senior manager living openly with HIV who, well, let's say, fueled this project with his incredible energy. Just wait some minutes, you will meet him soon. It's true, we wouldn't be here today without Axel Wedler. If my organization is the mother, he should be considered the father of Working Positively. Together with IBM, we developed a declaration, a pledge that companies could sign, and many more important people started to call other important people in other companies. The IBM management, including the CEO, Gregor Pillen, stood fully behind us from the very first moment. That was impressive. And so did SAP's, that was in Germany, for example, Senior Vice President Ernesto Marinelli, and so many more. We had a first press conference more than 2 years ago. An HIV-positive employee from SAP, Jörg Breitel, was excited to see his boss making this announcement and asked if he could join us. Of course he could. At the kickoff in Hamburg in June 2019, we had 50 companies and employers signing the declaration. Now there are more than 100. The German Minister for Health just signed, and so did representatives of the ministries for work and for defense, including the army. And now Working Positively becomes a global movement. This is what we are talking about today. We celebrate the start in the United States. At the same time, Working Positively takes off in Austria and the Czech Republic. So more countries are getting ready. To make clear that life with HIV has changed so much and people with HIV can live and work like everyone else is nothing less than a historic mission. I'm more than grateful that our baby Working Positively is growing so strong, that we are a global movement now, and that so many wonderful people support it. I wish to express my deep gratitude to everyone who helped to make this come true today. It was hard and compassionate work, and we love to do it with you guys. It belongs to the core of this program that in each country, a national NGO implements it together with engaged companies. This is the moment where I hand it over to the Human Rights Campaign, HRC. We are so happy you're doing this with us, and we are sure it will be very successful. Thank you so much, and all the best, and over to you, Beck Bailey.
Thank you, Holger, for that wonderful introduction and for telling us about the story of the origin of this important program to reduce workplace stigma for people living with HIV. My name is Beck Bailey. I am director of HRC's Workplace Equality Program, and I'm so excited to be here today with our guests, including Axel Wedler, who Holger spoke about a moment ago. He's a senior manager in global business services at IBM. Also joining us today are Bob Breitel, Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at IBM, and Margo't Goodson, Vice President and Head of North American Diversity and Inclusion at SAP. Welcome to all our panelists, and thank you for joining us on this important launch of Working Positively here in the United States. So let's get started with something that Holger spoke about, which is the experiences of people who are HIV positive in the workplace, and talk a little bit to Axel. Axel, thank you for joining us. And can you share with us a little bit of your personal experience and what's driving you to be open with your status in the workplace? And as Holger mentioned, be that kind of grandfather inspiration to this entire program.
Yes, of course, Beck. Good morning to all of you from Germany. And I'm really very happy on this special event today that we can start the whole program in the United States. I got my diagnosis about HIV in the year 2002. And to be very open to you all, it was a real shock for me, both privately as well as professionally. And it took me more than 4 years fully to accept my diagnosis and to live with HIV. You know, if you don't expect such a diagnosis and it just happens in your life and people tell you, oh, you may not live too long, you may have a lot of different problems in your life, privately and professionally, due to your infection, you really need time to accept that this diagnosis cannot be changed. But it changed my way of thinking. And in fact, I'm still living, and I'm still living very well. And you see, I'm working as well. And that's my message today. Don't give up when you have got this diagnosis. There's no reason to give up. The big challenge for me was at that time to not to hide, because everybody was telling me from the doctors, from every side, don't tell about your disease, neither to your family or not to your friends, nor to your employer. Your employer will sack you. They will throw you out. They will not work with you. And I believed that for more than 4 years. It took me 4 years to be open towards IBM. And these were very tough years for me, because if you have this burden on your shoulder to hide something, it takes a lot of power from you. And in 2006, I was open to my company and the reaction was totally different. IBM from the very first moment accepted my disease and gave me all the support I needed. And that, I think, was the big message I want to spread today. Don't hide. Don't hide. Don't have fear to be open, because this can take a lot of load from your shoulders if you are open.
And what kind of things, Axel, did you find that IBM did in particular that made you feel that sense of support and welcome with?
The first of all was that my manager at that time, he told me, don't be afraid about your working career. You will be treated like anybody else in the company. You can do your career. You can get your earnings and everything. And he not only said that, but he was really giving me the feeling I can believe his words. And he changed this environment, because at that time I needed really some medical treatment, much more than nowadays. And I had also some times off where I had to stay in hospital, but this was not a problem for the company. They accepted it. My colleagues accepted it. My reports accepted it. And so I got the feeling, hey, they can handle my disease and I can live with it.
Yeah, so there was that focus on the work that you were doing, the contributions you were making, that reassurance from your leadership, and even the availability of leave time to take care of your medical concerns, all of those things so critical to feeling truly supported at work. I want to invite Margo't and Bob into our conversation as well, and from their roles as leaders within the organization, and have a little bit of an expansion on this conversation. I think, like many aspects of the diversity and inclusion journey and conversation, this journey towards supporting HIV positive employees starts on a personal level. Can each of you tell us about how you've grown in your own understanding of the particular challenges and needs of people living with HIV, and even how you challenge your own stereotypes and misconceptions during that process? Because we all have them as part of our socialization and our misinformation around the disease. Margo't, let's start with you. What has your journey been like?
Sure, Beck, thanks for the question. Thanks for having me here today. It's been quite a journey, but as we are all eternal learners, I have evolved in my understanding of AIDS, HIV, and colleagues living with it. You think about other once fatally diseases that are now manageable chronic conditions, and it's no different, right? And so I myself live with high blood pressure, right? And I'm not saying it's the exact same thing, but what I'm saying is that if it's unknown and your ability to perform your duties aren't impeded, it should not matter. We often think about being fair-minded and inclusive in our responsibilities and our actions towards one another as part of humanity, and that we're in the workplace to do a job. So my education and ability to see year over year people thriving, managing in the workplace and in their personal lives very successfully has really helped to mitigate prior concerns, honestly, fears, misunderstandings, misconceptions as to what people can do and what accommodations are needed or not needed. I mean, I think Axel spoke about just understanding of hospital stays and treatments and things, if needed, is something that people would do, whether it were cancer or many other diseases that befall our society. And so I think that that's been the biggest evolution for me in seeing that, no, it did not necessarily mean that you had to do something drastically different than another condition, but that it was manageable in a way that professionals are professionals. We are all here to do a job. And with those responsibilities not being impeded, it really wasn't anyone's business to have a response to it other than of mutual respect for a colleague.
Thank you. And, I really appreciate that sense that we are focusing on job performance, on, the measurable outcomes that we have. Just because we have any particular condition in life doesn't mean that we aren't meeting our obligations under our role. And even when we can't, that there aren't ways to make the appropriate workplace accommodations for someone. Bob, tell us a little bit about your journey around working positively and your work at IBM.
Great. Thanks, Beck. And it's great to be here, an honor to be here with Axel and with Margo't as well. So I'm just delighted to be part of this program. It's so inspiring. My awareness of the HIV challenges goes way back, and it's deeply personable for me. I lost a close friend who was HIV positive and then died of AIDS in the very early days of the AIDS epidemic. And at that time, he could not tell anybody, his close friends or his family, that he was HIV positive. And I just thought of how lonely that is to have to suffer through when he eventually got AIDS, that disease, and not be able to talk about it. So I've always had a passion about it. Secondly, I'm in the LGBT plus community myself, and while it's HIV can happen to anybody, as we know, that's another area of kind of misconception that can happen sometimes, is this is a gay disease, and it's not, but it is significantly impacted in the LGBT plus community. So my community in particular has been hit hard by HIV. And so when the Working Positively opportunity presented itself, thanks to the work in our DACH region with Axel and IBM and SAP and our NGO, I just wanted to be part of it and to help out. And I'm just so inspired by the stories and the work that's being done so far, and looking forward to how we could continue to further it.
Well, I want to bounce off that a little bit, if I could, Bob. You spoke a little bit about, the experiences with the community, and when someone, maybe is isolated in the loneliness. And I want to bring that into the context of work, and maybe invite Axel into this as well. I think about, I often say diversity starts in kind of policy and practice and hiring, but inclusion starts at the coffee pot, meaning, that kind of relationship or workplace dialogue that people have, just over the morning coffee in the office, if you will, and now virtually with the morning coffee. Axel, can you talk about the difference it makes to be able to be open about your status in terms of your relationship with your colleagues and, that sense of belonging, if you will?
Sure. It gives me the feeling of being free. And this is very important, to feel free at your work. But nevertheless, there are still some challenges to face. When I present together with my friend Jörg from SAP our stories, quite often the first question after our presentation to both of us is, "Oh, we didn't know that you are gay." And we both think, hey, we were talking about a disease. We didn't talk any word about sexual orientation. Why people's mind immediately change towards the thinking of what they are gay? The second question, which is really sometimes very harmful, you both seem to be very clever people. Why did you make such mistakes in your lives? This feeling of being guilty of having this disease is something really very challenging, because nobody likes to feel guilty. And I think this we have to get out of our minds. HIV is something everybody can get. Doesn't matter if he's gay, hetero, bi, or transgender. It has nothing to do with sexual orientation. And secondly, even people who might have a responsibility for having the disease, they should never have the feeling of being guilty. So there are still a lot of things we have to change in our minds, even nowadays.
Very much so. And as in fact, here in the United States, 24% of new diagnoses are of people who identify as straight. So there's and that number is rising, in fact. And so there's a real concern that this misconception that this is an LGBTQ plus issue only actually really harms people in not knowing that they're susceptible to the disease.
And Beck, if you don't mind, when we talk about personal journeys, you talk about statistics in particular, we talk about 46% of the AIDS, HIV positive cases in the U.S. are African American, Black, and 22% are Latinx, right? And so that has personal story and intersection to me here. And we talk about why it matters. And SAP, in looking to be the most inclusive software company on the planet, we have intersectional goals around gender, ethnicity, et cetera. And therefore, it's going to be intersectional even to here in HIV. And Axel, hearing you speak about being free, we have a campaign about free to be me at SAP, and living your best self and identifying all that is with your lifestyles, conditions, etc., so that we can better embrace those differences and make it a better workplace in being inclusive. And I just think that's so important, because it really does make a difference in your day-to-day work life. So I just wanted to add that, context there, and how it is very relative, and just really excited to see that the spotlight is being placed on it in the proper way now than it has been versus in the past.
I appreciate that intersectional approach, and how this brings this conversation of this campaign and the heart of this campaign, right? Education, awareness, destigmatization, into your inclusion strategy, that it's part of the overall ecosystem that SAP and IBM are trying to address, as well as our other companies that are joining us today in the launch of this important campaign. Bob, can you talk a little bit about that same aspect through the lens of IBM? How does this fit into your overall inclusion strategy and the campaign itself and the tactics that you're taking over there at IBM?
Yeah, thanks, Beck. So this campaign, I think, aligns very, very well to IBM's diversity and inclusion strategy and our values. One of IBM's core values is respect for the individual. And that's what this is all about, is respect and inclusion. IBM is 100% committed to creating a safe and inclusive workplace for every single employee, and that includes every employee living with HIV. I think there's some tangible things too that are important, just to give you some examples for what IBM is doing. And it's not just HIV, but broader healthcare issues, especially in these times. And Margot highlighted that this is, affects disproportionately certain communities. So this is really important. So a couple of tangible examples. IBM provides opportunities for employees to get life insurance. So as long as gets a little complicated because it varies by country, but as long as it's legally allowed, IBM will certainly support, and it's part of its risk-based life insurance model, to cover employees that are HIV positive. When it comes to healthcare benefits, again, as long as it's legally allowed in the country, we provide coverage for HIV employees, HIV positive employees, as part of their healthcare benefits. And not only for treatment, but for prevention as well. So for example, PrEP is 100% covered by your insurance as an IBM employee. So there are, I think, a lot of good tangible examples that we could share with other companies as part of this campaign on what we can do to support diversity and inclusion, especially for this particular community.
Well, that's such a great call out, Bob, because, what we see here at the Human Rights Campaign in our interactions with employers is that many employers aren't aware of the prohibitive costs of treatment like PrEP as a preventative. And we can end this disease in our lifetime if we support initiatives like PrEP and the availability of those drugs. But if it is not included in the pharma benefit, it is generally cost prohibitive to most individuals. Additionally, I like the point out of the insurance challenge, because certainly here in the United States, many life insurance policies do have discriminatory carve-outs around people who not only may test HIV positive, but some of them even prevent underwriting for individuals who are taking PrEP as a preventative. So they actually aren't people who are HIV positive, but are actually taking steps to prevent contracting the disease. And that is the barrier to insurance coverage. And we can understand how that would be really unfortunate and a challenging situation.
And Bob, I love that you even bring in benefits, right? Because we talk about making D&I or DNA at SAP, which means it's foundational. It's practices, procedures, benefits, et cetera. So to have the total package of things aligning together really make a difference. We often look at our current anti-discrimination policy, which is just our straight HR policy around anti-discrimination, and how inclusive that is as it relates to treating everyone with respect and not having any statuses against them, such as this. Some of our benefits that point to that direction, but just more holistically, TLL education that some of their teams have done and our E&G groups have done around HIV and AIDS. All of those things show the totality, the end-to-end ways that companies can engage in being inclusive, and really just ensuring that it's foundational to your company and that it is permeating across all demographics. And this is another aspect of it and should be treated just the same.
Absolutely.
Margo't, I appreciate that because, to me, that makes me think of some other areas of our standing programs and benefits that we could engage with around this campaign. For example, what does our wellness education look like? What's being emphasized in wellness programs? Are we providing opportunities with our wellness vendors and providers to raise up education about prevention or treatment under HIV and AIDS? And I also think about EAP programs and whether or not we've investigated whether those vendors are prepared to support employees who have a new diagnosis, for example. Axel talked about how difficult it was to manage just even that initial diagnosis. And we have these programs that could be prepared to support our employees in those ways. What are you all thinking about looking forward? Margo't or Bob, what comes to mind in the coming year as an area of opportunity now that you are cascading this campaign from Germany to the United States and elsewhere?
So what I think about is some of our standard programs that we have in place, amplifying them more, right? So we've had some educational sessions already in the past, doing more of that. We have an inclusion ally movement where we talk about becoming an ally to different causes, different people, different programs. So really pushing this Working Positively into that inclusion ally movement as an option. And then every year we do both a Spring into Service in April as well as an October month of service, and we select organizations with which we support either in dollars and or time. So individuals can make donations and get company match for that. And then we also have, in addition to dollars for dollars, dollars for doers. So you can volunteer either individually or collectively as a month of service initiative, specifically around whatever causes you so choose. So in my role as North America Head of Diversity and Inclusion, really ensuring that Working Positively is embraced into our CSR program, as well as into our Inclusion Ally program under D&I, and then, of course, more education and benefits. We definitely have a very robust benefits offering as it is today, and it is very friendly to a number of chronic conditions, and we can continue to evolve those. I have to look a little deeper with our lead on that to see what we cover, what we don't, what we can add net new in 2021. So I think there's a lot on the horizon we could certainly look forward to doing, and happy to as a thought leader with SAP.
Yeah, I agree with Margo't. And one of, I think, the exciting things about the program is the collaboration that we get to do together and share ideas, because I think every time I hear SAP and Margo't speak, I get some new ideas and vice versa. So a couple of additional thoughts on top of that. In addition to my day job, I get the opportunity to be the executive sponsor for our marketplace diversity team, where we go talk to clients about IBM's diversity and inclusion policies. And they have been fantastic in brainstorming ideas on how we could take Working Positively and amplify it around the globe. So we're real excited about launching it in the United States. We already did a preview at the Out and Equal conference earlier in October and had like 300 attendees at that session, and many people heard Axel's inspirational story and have already reached out to him. Companies have reached out on how do we sign the declaration. One other idea that we brainstormed on, in addition to everything Margo't said, is that I saw a statistic as we were preparing for this, that there were still 1 in 7 people who are HIV positive who are unaware that they're positive. So getting tested is another I think opportunity and effort for us to focus on as part of this campaign. And I think in June is when HIV Awareness Day comes up. So that could be an opportunity to promote this campaign and promote getting testing. So I think there's a lot of good ideas. Finally, this just happened in the last couple of weeks. One of our IBM senior executives was meeting with one of our top clients, one of the CEO of this company. And the CEO asked us to talk about diversity and inclusion as the starting topic for their meeting. The starting topic for their meeting, and Working Positively was one of the programs that was mentioned at that discussion. So we, the ripple effect that we can all do to make a difference here is really inspirational, I think.
I couldn't agree more. As we have this panel and this rollout on World AIDS Day as part of the larger movement of working positively across multiple countries and looking forward to its greater expansion, I just really think companies can have such a powerful role here. We talk about so many different ways that companies elevate the importance of inclusion, about making people feel like they can be free to be themselves, that they are welcomed in a sense of belonging, no matter who they are, and welcomed for their skills and contributions to the workforce. It gives me a lot of hope as someone who engages in this work, who, like Bob, was part of the AIDS epidemic in the United States in the 80s, and really lost so many people close to me as part of those early days. To see where we are today, full of hope, of a message of inclusion, of a message of prevention and moving forward against the disease. Axel, I want to invite you to give us some closing words. You've got these companies on the line. We have many companies who are joining us in this campaign. What would be your call to action for all of them today?
I'm so proud, both for IBM as well as for SAP, that I have here two companies which are really open. And my pledge would be to all our audience nowadays and all the companies who have already signed, who are willing to sign, just create an open culture within your company that people can talk about everything they need to talk. It can be HIV, it can be something different, but it has to be the culture that you don't have any kind of fear or that you are not anxious to talk about it. When you are anxious, you will have a lot of burden on your shoulders, and this burden is not necessary. Be open, be free, be able to talk about everything you want to talk. And that's my pledge to everyone.
Thank you, Axel. And now turning just finally to Bob and Margot. Bob, I'll ask you to go first. Any final thoughts or calls to action for folks watching today?
Well, I think Axel said it all, but I'll just add one additional thought to this. The way I could try to relate to this is just my own experience coming out in the workplace and as a member of the LGBT community. And I know that varies by individual. For me, it was hard. Every time I thought I could just come out once and be done and be over with. But as we all know, that it doesn't quite work that easily. So you're doing that every day and in the workplace in particular. I'm just truly inspired knowing how challenging it was to come out in the workplace for me personally, and then to think about having to talk about becoming HIV positive, the courage that it takes. But I just think by sharing the stories Axel has done and others, that'll make it easier for other people. And as Axel mentioned, it really is liberating and freeing when you're able to do that. And finally, that's why it's so important for our companies to support our employees, to be there for them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And in preparing for today, I looked at what the theme of this year's World AIDS Day is around ending the epidemic and resilience and impact. And it highlights how resilient those who have living with AIDS have been, and we as corporate citizens owe it to them to be resilient and make an impact now and for the future for working positively with AIDS. So that would be my call to action. Let us as corporations be resilient in our efforts and impact the communities that need us as it relates to HIV/AIDS. Thanks so much for having us here today too.
Wonderful. That was a perfect ending and a note for us to close out on. I just want to reiterate my thank yous to Axel, Bob, and Margot for being here, and specifically to IBM and SAP for being leaders and founding members of rolling this campaign out across the United States. Your leadership is very important in the business community, and just want to acknowledge that today. Thanks, everyone, and thank you for joining this session. If you're interested in the campaign, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're happy to get you signed up and get you the resources you need to help encourage working positively in your workplace. Thank you.